Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, or if you're new here for the first time, welcome, and I'm so excited you caught this video. I am super excited to share with you these 7 fall Dollar Tree DIYs. We're going to jump right into today's video. No long drawn out intro. I've really got nothing to say and I want to get right to crafting. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment. For this first one, we are using the coveted oval Dollar Tree frame. So I picked up 2 of these from Dollar Tree. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take the backs off and we're going to take that black chalkboard part out. I'm going to take these outside and I'm going to give them a good coat of spray paint with this black spray paint. I'm going to let them dry, bring them back inside, and then I'm going to go ahead and use some rub and buff over the whole frame. Now you may be wondering why I'm painting a gold frame back gold again. It's because the Dollar Tree frames are nice and everything, but they look very plastic and very cheap. So if we spray paint them black first and then we use the rub and buff over top, it looks real legit. And I highly suggest you do this with the Dollar Tree frames. It makes a world of difference. Now I started putting on the rub and buff with a brush, but I didn't really like the way it was spreading out, so I switched to just using an old sock for the frame oval part, and then for the detail part, then I went in with the brush. I'm going to take this piece of scrapbooking paper that's just like meant to look like old definitions, and then I'm going to Mod Podge the chalkboard part that was originally in the frame, putting a nice light even coat, and then placing the paper down on top, and then using a scraper just to smooth it out and make sure there are no wrinkles. I'm going to go ahead and flip it back over and cut off the excess using a pair of scissors. Once all the excess is cut off, I'm going to go ahead and come back in with the Mod Podge, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go zigzagging over top of the paper. I want it to look almost like this is like an oil print. I want to give it some definition and a little bit of shine and sheen, so when it catches the light, it's going to look more like a painting. I'm going to go ahead and put it back into the frame, put the backing back on, and then we're going to really do something neat in this frame. So let's flip it back over here, and I'm going to begin by taking this Rustic fall faux florals. It's like dried florals. I've had this in my craft stash for a long time, so unfortunately it's not from Dollar Tree, but I'm sure you could find something similar. Then I'm going to take the Dollar Tree velour velvet pumpkins, and I'm going to add some hot glue, and I'm going to stick a pumpkin down there right in the center. I'm then going to build off of this, adding in more stuff. So I had these nice little plastic pumpkins as well from Dollar Tree. They're a different size. What we really want here is different sizes, different textures to put this frame together. So I have a nice green velvet one here that I'm going to add, and then adding in more of the grass underneath as well, and another one of those little plastic pumpkins. And for the final touch, I just have these leaves from another pick that I'm just going to glue in here as well. And this is the finished look. Alright guys, this next one is super easy. So I picked up this tray from Dollar Tree. We're going to give it a coat of black spray paint, let it fully dry, bring it back inside, and then I'm going to go over it with the rub and buff, the same rub and buff I used in the last DIY, and I seriously love this stuff, you guys. I use it a lot, you'll notice, but it is just so good and so easy to work with. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a paintbrush, and I'm just going to very lightly brush over the raised areas on this tray, the leaf patterns that are actually raised. You just catch them with the brush and the rub and buff, and that's literally all I did for this DIY. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about this one. I think it's super easy, super fun, and it turned a plain Dollar Tree tray into something a little more classy, a little more chic. You can let me know what color you would use, if you like the black or if you do something else. For this next one, you're going to want to head to the home decor aisle and look for this box of deco balls, and you're going to grab a bunch of these. I have these sticks from my craft stash. They're actually from Dollarama, but you could collect sticks from outside for this as well. You're going to take a drill bit and you're going to drill down through the top of the ball. I started in my studio and then it wasn't feeling very safe, so I actually took the ball outside, put it in the vice grip in the garage, and this was way more safe doing it this way. So I drilled a hole down the top. Unfortunately, I did crack one of the balls, so when you're looking for these at Dollar Tree, make sure you find the balls where the seam goes around the ball horizontally and not vertically, because I found the one that was vertical cracked. I filled the hole with some hot glue and then I shoved the stick down into the hole. To give it a more pumpkin-like look, I decided to add some dried moss to the top, so I hot glued around the hole and then I stuck this on top, working around the stick. And this is also great because it helps to hold the stick in place as well if you shove it down into the hole a little bit. I continued doing the same thing on the rest of the balls, working the sticks in and the moss as well. When I was looking at them, I decided they still weren't looking quite pumpkinish enough for me, so I found some thick floral wire, and then working it around the stem of a paintbrush, I made some little curlicues to kind of represent the vines on a pumpkin. So I did mess up here because I should have done this first and actually stuck it into the hole, because I had a heck of a time trying to push this floral wire in through the moss and the stick. I did eventually get them, but if you're going to do this, I suggest putting the floral wire in at the same time as the stem. I added in some leaves and I think they turned out pretty cute, but you guys can let me know in the comments, do you think these look like pumpkins or do you think I'm reaching here? Next time you're at Dollar Tree, grab some fall florals and then head to the toy aisle and pick up some of these wiffle balls. I'm going to begin by taking my wiffle ball and I'm going to get this velvet ribbon and I'm going to cut a piece that's about 20 to 30 inches in length. I'm going to take one end of the velvet ribbon, sliding it through one hole and pulling it through another hole with some needle nose pliers. I'm going to knot off the end and then I'm going to take that knot and I'm going to slide it down through the hole so that it's inside the wiffle ball. Then I'm going to come in with one of my bouquets of flowers and I'm going to rip the flower heads from the stems, and then using the flat part at the bottom, I'm going to apply some glue and stick those into the holes on the wiffle ball. I'm going to hold it for a few seconds just to make sure the glue sets. Then I'm going to continue adding the flowers in and around the wiffle ball into different holes, placing the hot glue and then shoving them in the holes sporadically around the wiffle ball. Once I've done enough of one type of flower, then I move on to another flower, working that in as well to make sure they're evenly spaced. And you can add as many different flowers as you want until you fill all the holes of the wiffle ball. Then I'm going to take the greenery off the floral stems, pinching it and adding a little bit of hot glue to the bottom and then sticking those in between the florals. This just adds a nice bit of depth and dimension to the floral ball. I've made two of these. The other one I used a little bit brighter flower just for some more color. And then to add just the cherry on the top, I'm going to add a nice green bow for fall. I'm just working the bow here around the velvet hanger, tying it on with some wire, making sure it's nice and secure. And then our floral balls are finished. This year Dollar Tree has the cutest knit pumpkins on dowels. So I picked up a bunch of these, but I'm not going to keep them on the dowels. I also grabbed some beads from the craft section in these beautiful fall colors. I'm going to begin by taking this butcher twine. You can find this in the kitchen section at Dollar Tree. I'm going to take some Scotch tape and I'm going to wrap it around the end just to create a blunt end that I can shove through the beads without the end of the twine fraying each time. So I'm wrapping it nice and tight and then pushing it through each bead. I'm going to start with the lighter brown color. I'm going to thread on 2 of these beads and then I'm going to thread on the darker brown, and then I'm going to add 2 more of the light brown. So this is the pattern that I'm doing: 2 light, 1 dark, 2 light. Then I'm going to take my miter shears. I'm going to cut off the dowel from the sweater pumpkin, and I'm going to take a large yarn needle and I'm going to thread the twine through the yarn needle, and then I'm going to push the needle directly through the knit pumpkin. Now these are nice and soft, so the needle goes right through. They're plush, so you don't have to worry about hitting anything, and you just pull it right out the other side. So they thread on very nicely on this twine. Now, after I did this, I tried pushing the needle through the beads, and I was surprised to see that the big needle fit through the beads, so I didn't have to take it off each time. So I was really happy about that. So I continued my pattern: 2 light, a dark, and then 2 light, and then adding on another knit pumpkin. I was going to add in the colored pumpkins as well, but I decided I wanted to keep this more natural, so I just stuck with the cream colored pumpkins rather than adding in the colors. But maybe I'll make another one in the future with the colored ones because these just turned out so cute. So I continued the pattern, working away, and then once I had them all on, I decided I wanted some tassels for the end. To make my tassels, I used this wooden palette from Dollar Tree. It's just a guide. You can use a piece of cardboard, anything you want really. You just lay a piece of string horizontally across, and then you vertically wrap around the whatever you have, the cardboard. In my case, I have this little palette. You wrap as many times as you want depending how thick you want your tassel, and then when you pull it off the pallet, you take that horizontal string that you had and you tie it off at the top to create the top part of the tassel, holding it nice and tight. So you pull it really tight, tie a really tight knot, and then you're going to take another piece of string and you're going to go about a 1/3 way down. This is going to create the head of your tassel. So you're going to tie that off to create that little bulge there, a very nice tight knot again. And then you're going to go ahead and take a pair of scissors and just cut open the ends. It's really super and easy to make a tassel. To fluff out my tassel, I trim first so it's all even, and then I take this little brush here. It's actually for cleaning paintbrushes, but it's hard, so it brushes nicely through the tassel, and it actually frays the twine a little bit, so I get a nice fluffy tassel. You don't have to do this step if you want it more compact, but I like it nice and fluffy and bushy, so I like to do this with twine and any kind of rope really, and it just fluffs it out so nice. Then I'm going to go ahead and tie it on the bottom of my garland. So I tie it on nice and tight, and then I trim off the ends. I've done 2 tassels, 1 for each side. And this is how my garland turned out. I came across these little wooden apple boxes at Dollar Tree and I was kind of bummed they didn't have pumpkins, but I picked up 4 of these anyways and I'm going to try my best to turn these into pumpkins. I also grabbed some of their air dry clay. Now I'm going to preface this by saying I am not really a fan of this clay. This is my first time working with clay from Dollar Tree and I'm not really a clay expert. So maybe you guys can let me know in the comments if you have any tips or tricks. If you've worked with this Dollar Tree clay before, let me know in the comments because it was not my friend. I began by laying the clay out on top of the front part of the apple, just kind of molding it to it, but I found it very hard to work with and very crumbly. And it wasn't until I realized maybe I should be adding some water. And once I added the water, things were starting to work a little bit better, but it was still really hard to work with. I tried a glass rolling pin and that didn't really help. But again, here I am using the water and just kind of smoothing the clay out so it's less clumpy, and this did work, I will say. But again, if you have any tips or tricks for working with Dollar Tree clay, I would love to hear them. So I continued working along, and then I used the back of a paintbrush, the bottom end of a paintbrush, to indent some grooves into what's going to be my pumpkin. So I just tried to make it look as much as a pumpkin as I could, working the grooves down around, kind of rounding it to drive away from that apple shape. Now this is where you guys are really going to have to stick with me here and bear with me because I was just working as I went. I really didn't know what I was doing here, but I wanted some pumpkin leaves, but I didn't think I could freehand a pumpkin leaf shape. So I found these little wooden maple leaves in my craft section and I thought, why don't I just put the clay over top of these like I'm doing with the wooden apple box. So I did that. I pushed it into the clay to make a hole so that when the clay sets, the hole will be there. And I really thought that was going to work really well. So I moved on to making my stems. Now these I freehanded because I thought, how hard is the stem to make? But again, I was really disappointed in the clay because I couldn't get a nice curve. I wanted a nice curly stem. And every time I tried to curl the stem, the clay would just crumble. So I had to scratch that and I had to just go with a straightforward, straight up and down stem, which isn't really what I wanted, but like I said, I just couldn't get this clay to curve at all. So I ended up just setting it on top of the wooden apple box where the apple stem was and just kind of molding it around that with my fingers and trying to push it into like a top point to make it look like a pumpkin stem. I think I did a pretty good job, but you'll have to see in the finished project. I did use the end of a paintbrush as well to put grooves in the stem, and with each pumpkin I did, I felt like I was getting better and better as I worked with the clay, learning how it works and everything like that. Each pumpkin looked a little bit better than the last, so I let them set and dry for over 24 hours, and then when I came back to them, the clay just kind of slid off the wood. And I haven't really worked with clay before, so I don't know, is it supposed to stick to wood? But either way, I thought, well, I can just glue it. So I wasn't worried about that. So I grabbed my paint. I went with this orange acrylic paint and I started painting all my pumpkins. So I painted the pumpkins first. The orange is a little bright, but I'm going to tone it down in a bit. Then I moved on to the leaves, and this is where things take a nasty turn. So as I was working with the leaves, they were very clumpy. They were coming off the wooden leaves. They were just so ugly and chunky, and I just didn't like them. But I painted 3 of them, and then when I got to the last one, it shattered in my hands. Like, just completely fell apart. So I thought, you know what? We're just going to go ahead and we're going to use these wooden leaves instead and forget the clay. And by using the wooden leaves, maybe I'm adding a different texture, a different element, and maybe it won't look so fake and clumpy. So I'm kind of glad that happened. The stems, I moved on to painting. I painted these a nice brown. They all worked out well. None of them fell apart. I did have to be very, very careful though. For the wooden apple boxes, I painted these with the Country Chic paint. The shade is called Canopy. I painted the entire box, so the front, the sides, insides, underneath, made sure everything was covered. And then I'm going to go ahead after those dried and I'm going to add some antiquing wax. I'm going to start with my pumpkins first. I want to dull these pumpkins down a bit. They're just a little bit too bright for me. So I used an old sock and I waxed in the indents and around the pumpkins, and it really dulled them down to make them look a little more rustic, a little more antique-y looking, and not so like bright and in your face. And I was really happy with this color. I rubbed on some of the antiquing wax on the stem as well, and this really brought out the grooves in the stems by rubbing that antiquing wax in there and made them look a little more realistic and not so flat. I was having fun with the antiquing wax, so I continued on and added this to the wooden apple boxes as well. I wanted to give these some depth and dimension so they didn't look like wooden Dollar Tree boxes. So I put the antiquing wax all over them, on the insides, anywhere where it would be seen. I even went on the bottoms too, even though they won't be seen. I just made sure I covered the entire thing with the antiquing wax. Then once those were fully dry, I added on some Gorilla Glue, super glue. I really wanted to make sure these would hold, so I started with the super glue, but I used a combination of hot glue just so that it would hold while it was setting. And I started with my first pumpkin, put it in place on the box, and then I basically just started reconstructing these back together. So I started with the pumpkin, then adding in the stem, and then putting in the wooden leaf. Now the wooden leaf didn't fit exactly back in the hole that I did. I think maybe when the clay dried, maybe the hole caved in, but I just kind of set them on top, and I still think it looks okay. I added some curly cues as well with some floral wire, and working them around the stem just for that little realistic touch. And when it comes to pumpkins, I love the curly cues because they have the vines and everything, and it just makes them look so unique and more realistic, I think. And this is how it turned out. But we're not quite finished with this one. We're going to take this box here. I actually got this at Dollarama, not Dollar Tree, but it fits so nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and paint on the same canopy color from Country Chic Paint on this box as well, making sure I do the whole surfaces, front, back, and inside as well. And then once that dries, I'm going to come in with the antiquing wax just to make sure everything is cohesive. And I'm going to go over the whole box with the antiquing wax. I'm using an old sock, and I have to tell you guys, I use the old socks when I'm putting on the wax. These are the mismatched socks that you find in the laundry all the time and you don't know what to do with them. I save them for applying wax. They come in so handy for this. Then I nestled my pumpkins in the box once it was dry, and I love these wooden apple boxes from Dollar Tree because of the way they are, I could stagger them in behind each other for this like unique little staggered look, and it actually turned out really nice. Then I worked in some dry moss in the front just to make it look like these pumpkins were like in a pumpkin patch. And I thought this was so cute. It was turning out so great. Then I decided what I wanted to put inside the pumpkins, and I settled on these candles from Dollar Tree. They're the artificial candles. I did have to buy these smaller ones just because I needed these little stands that were in them because I couldn't get anything else to fit in those apple boxes. The candles looked really fake to me, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add a dripping effect on these candles with some hot glue. Now, when you want to do a dripping effect on fake candles and you want it to look realistic, you always start at the bottom of the drip and work up to the top of the candle. So how you do it is you put like a big glob of hot glue at the bottom and then drag it up, and it'll naturally thin out so that it looks so realistic and it looks like it is actually dripping wax. So again, you start at the bottom, put a glob of hot glue, and then drag your hot glue gun up to the top. I let the hot glue dry. Then I came in with this suede paint from Deco. Now, the reason I'm using this suede, I find this stuff sticks so well to plastic. I have such a hard time getting paint to stick to plastic products, and when I use this suede stuff, it really sticks. Now, it does have a bit of a grit in it, so you will see like a gritty texture, but I think all things considered, these turned out pretty cool. Alright guys, for my last DIY, I picked up 2 of these mason jar shelf sitters from Dollar Tree. We're going to go ahead and we're going to take off the golden leaf and the twine, but we are going to set these aside and we're going to reuse them for this project. So I'm just going to take them off, set them aside. Even the twine, we're going to use that because we have it, we might as well. I'm going to take my craft razor and I'm going to scrape off the paper and the glitter as much as I can. We don't want any of this glitter left on these mason jars. The craft razor wasn't working as well for this one. It was just kind of ripping the paper. So I decided to use a sander just to get rid of the most of it as I could. So I did this on this one and same with the other mason jar, removing all the paper as much as I could. I'm going to take some matte Mod Podge and I'm going to spread out an even layer on both mason jars, making sure to avoid the area where the galvanized tin is at the top. So I'm going to paint on a nice light coat, spreading it out, and I'm going to let that fully dry. I'm going to take 3 palettes from Dollar Tree and using this Deco Art Vintage Effect Wash, I'm going to stain the palettes. Vintage Effect Wash is a paint-like stain, so you can use it as a paint or a stain, and that's why I like it. It's a lot less messy than real stain. You can just brush it on and rub it off. It works so well. While the palettes are drying, I'm going to go ahead with these scrapbooking papers and I'm going to lay them down on my mason jar, and putting a piece of butcher paper over top, I'm going to use my heat press to reactivate the Mod Podge and have these papers stick. I'm going to go nice and slowly working around the paper, making sure that it's all adhered and stuck to the mason jar. Once I've done that, I'm going to take a craft knife and I'm going to just slice off the excess paper around the mason jar and around the top by the galvanized steel. Once I have all the paper removed, I'm going to use a little piece of fine grit sandpaper and I'm just going to rough up the edges just a little bit. I don't want this too rustic, but I don't really like the cut paper edge, so I just want to blend it a little bit into the sides of the mason jar. Once I've finished with the sanding, I'm going to go ahead and bring in the Mod Podge again, and I'm going to Mod Podge over top of the scrapbooking paper. This is for a protection coat as well, but I'm going to be doing a cross-hatch technique over top to give the appearance of like a oil painting technique or like a texture. So if you work in a little cross-hatch pattern, it actually gives a really nice effect. So not only will this add as a protection on my paper, but it gives that cool effect when it catches the light. For the galvanized steel, I don't really like how stark and cheap it looks, so I'm going to go over it with a mixture of paint and flour. This is the Canopy from Country Chic Paint, and I've just mixed in a little bit of flour to make it rough and so that it sticks to the steel. I am going to actually add some cinnamon as well. I really want to complement the color on the side of the mason jar, and I think the cinnamon will make it look rough and rustic and actually match that color a lot better. I blended it in with a brush, and then coming back to my palette pieces, I'm going to work in some antiquing wax just a little bit on the edges, just to give some depth and dimension to these and make them look a little more realistic. I'm not going to go too crazy, just on the edges, just a little bit. And when I hold it up here, you can see the difference with antiquing wax and without antiquing wax. It really makes a big difference. I'm going to shake on a little bit more cinnamon just before the paint fully dries, just to let it sit on the top of it. Since the back sides of the mason jar are going to be seen, I decided to go over them with the Canopy color from Country Chic Paint, just to make sure it wasn't so unfinished looking. So I just used the Canopy from Country Chic Paint and a wide brush and just brushed over the back of these MDF mason jars, doing 2 full coats. Before I add back on the leaf and the twine, I wanted to add in a little bit extra something just to cover up this unsightly line where the galvanized steel meets the mason jar. So I have this nice embroidered ribbon that I'm going to add here, hot gluing it on the front and wrapping it around to the back. And then once I have that in place, I'm going to just slip the twine back over the mason jar that was there before and add back in the little gold leaf, gluing it right exactly where it was before. I really like this added touch of the embroidery lace underneath. I think it just jazzes it up just a little bit more. Now to put my caddy together, I'm going to flip a palette over on its front and I'm going to add some super glue down the sides and as well some hot glue. The hot glue is just to hold it in place while the super glue is setting. And then I'm going to nestle that mason jar with the front side facing out on each side right up against that ledge. It fits perfectly. I'm going to dry fit my other palette before adding the glue just to make sure it fits okay. And then the same thing, working on the edges of the palette right along that little edge. I'm going to nestle it in right in between the two mason jars. And I'm going to repeat this process on the other side. And this is the finished caddy. I think this turned out so cute, and when I saw these little mason jars in the Dollar Tree, this idea just popped into my head, and I think that you can put whatever you want in this caddy. I've put some napkins in here, my little fall pretty napkins, but you could also use it as a floral arrangement holder, anything really. The sky's the limit with this one. If you recreate this, go creative with this and really make it to suit your style. I really hope that you guys enjoyed these 7 fall Dollar Tree DIYs. Leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think. I love to read your guys' comments and I love to hear your thoughts. So please leave those comments below. Thank you so much for watching. And if you love this video, please hit that subscribe button because Christmas is coming so fast and I am already planning my Christmas crafting and it's going to be posted real soon. So stay tuned guys and we'll see you on the next one.